what happened for me, the piece of the story we didn't really get to was I ended up meeting an incredible man, like the king in my life. I was able to really see him as a king. And we have built the most beautiful life together that, and I said to you earlier, like, we don't work on our relationship. It
No.
just work. We are
Mm-mm.
so incredibly satisfied and happy. It doesn't mean that it's all perfect, but like we just
Mm.
don't put the effort into the relationship that he and I both thought in previous relationships you had to have to be happy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so that's what I want to say is like, and that's the same in business too. Like I've made a full circle in business that where my business used to concern me a lot and I felt like I needed to push and just all these things. I love my business.
Mm-hmm.
It's a portal of pleasure for me now.
Mm. Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Jonk. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly, and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone, to I Think I Can podcast. And today I'm delighted to introduce you to business mentor and newfound friend of mine. Her name is Kaase. She is an intuitive business coach and a relationship coach. So, welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Most welcome. Okay, so I think, I need to ask you to explain what an intuitive business coach is, because this is not like a common, title that I think a lot of entrepreneurs would be searching for. But yeah, tell us more what you mean by that.
Yes. So I've worked with a lot of different business owners over the years. And what I saw as a business owner myself and working with other business owners, that many people would try to implement someone else's strategies, someone
Mhm.
else's ideas into their own business. And it would be like those ideas would be very limited in their effectiveness
Yeah.
for both me and my clients. And what I started to kind of independently experiment with on my own about 10 years ago was really tapping more into my own intuition for
Mm.
my business and as I guided them. And then over the years, like that worked so well, right? Like dropping out of our heads, down into our bodies, really listening to our own intuition, what the divine was saying to us.
Mhm.
It worked so well that then a lot of what I do with people, with my clients, is not only use my own intuition for them, but guide them back to their own.
Okay,
So
so
that they're, yeah,
give
truly
us
using innovation, you know?
I know exactly what you're saying. In some ways, like I hired a business coach probably last fall, and it was very much of three-part methodology. This is what you do to gain followers on social media. You must do this, and if you're gonna post an offer, it like you need to take them through these 3 steps. And I know when I look back now, I thought, oh my gosh, like that's just not me. And so can you give us, I want you to give us a couple examples. Like maybe you can say, what does that exactly mean? Like dropping from the head and into your body, and to give an analogy maybe of a past client, like an example of what that looks like when it comes to owning or running a business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is the funny thing about our society is that where we are currently is that we've all been conditioned to use our brain and our mind for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and which then means we're not using intuition because
Mm-hmm.
the intuition doesn't really reside in the brain or the mind. It's a different energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not that one's even better than the other, actually. It's just that we've been so over conditioned to use the mind to think about things. We do that at the expense of our deeper knowing or our
Mm-hmm.
intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, the work that I'm doing is so much more about it's not, again, it's not that the thinking's wrong. It's not. We need to think, we need our
Mm-hmm.
minds, we need our brains to do all these things. But when we bring intuition, when we bring our deeper knowing into the picture, to me that's where a lot of times people have these quantum leaps,
Mm-hmm.
these real expansions that you can't quite understand in a way,
Mm-hmm.
like they
Mm-hmm.
don't make sense
Mm-hmm.
logically,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, over the years, gosh, I have so many different stories. Like I can think of, I just one. This is such a practical example, but one of my clients, this has been a couple of years ago. She was a leadership consultant, and she needed to go in and do a big presentation to a potential client, and she was really kind of using her, yeah, her brain and her experience and her logic to try to put this presentation together, and she wasn't getting anywhere. She was kind of driving herself crazy because she'd start something and stop and start something and stop, and it just wasn't making sense. And so we had a conversation about intuition, right? Of like, what's your deeper knowing about this? If you weren't thinking about it, if you were just to give your mind a break,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just give your mind a break. Don't try to quiet it or anything, but just give it a break and just sort of, yeah, get more connected to yourself. Take some deep breaths, get more connected to yourself. What what would it look like? What would that presentation look like then?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about kind of how to do that, and we had a great conversation about it. And she called me a day or two later and she said, "You're never going to guess what happened." I was driving just down the road in traffic and I thought about what you said and I started to let it fall away and I had to pull my car over. And in 10 minutes, my presentation was written because I knew I had a deeper knowing. My intuition just downloaded what I was to do.
Yeah.
So there's such a practicality and, like, I like to say, an efficiency in using
Mm.
our intuition, like certain things that you or I might kind of grind on for days and try to figure out how to do.
Yeah.
One intuitive insight just can yeah, it can write a whole presentation or bring a new client in or have
Mm-hmm.
someone have a really innovative idea. Innovation is always in my mind out of intuition, a divine download, deeper knowing. Like, to me, those things are all kind of similar,
Yes,
right? That's
exactly.
true innovation,
And then would you
new
would
ideas.
you also make that synonymous with like a gut instinct, sort of like?
Kind of. I think sometimes gut instincts, sometimes when people talk about gut instincts, they are talking about intuition. Other times people are talking about their conditioned response sometimes when they talk about gut
Mm,
instinct. So I think that's a little bit, it can be, but sometimes
mm-hmm.
people have a different understanding about that potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which could be, if it's conditioned response, it could be a fear response.
exactly. A
Yeah,
lot of times.
a lot
A
of
lot of
times.
times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So how do you distinguish between the fear response and true knowing? your truth, your wisdom, your intuition?
Yeah. This is what I would like it's a couple of things. Like I think a fear response often comes with like special effects in the
Yeah.
body. You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I know exactly what you
fireworks
mean.
that don't necessarily feel so great. Like that's
Right.
one of the things with fear. Like it can really like speed up your heart rate or have your
Yes.
palm sweat or have
Yes.
you like prickle in a weird way. Where to me, intuition many times, not always, but a lot of times it's quieter, it's
Yes.
more steady,
Yeah.
and a lot of times it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
keeps coming back. You know what I mean? Where fear responses can be a little bit all over the place.
Right.
If
Right.
it doesn't get our attention the first time, it's going to come back in a different way.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Like I think someone or some like in a book I read, I think it's sort of like it was like the difference is fear is, it's a fear response, a conditioned fear response when it's without the breath, or when
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
it's sort of like you can't breathe, whereas intuition is like, yeah, like you said, like a physiological, like, I mean, there's breath, like it's almost like you're coming
Hmm.
home. It feels so
Yes.
good. It feels so good in your body. Where, yeah, fear is more like it's the arousal with the heartbeat, sweaty palms. I must run sort of thing. I must run.
Yes.
And so yeah, yeah. So, which makes sense too when you think about an animal, like, the fear-based fight or flight, it's instinctual. It's sort of like, the eyes are piercing. It's like, I need to attack or I need to run. It's one or the other. Um, so okay, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And now like you're also a relationship coach. So it's interesting. How does business and relationships, how is that actually connected?
Oh gosh. Well, it's so interesting because yeah, for many years I worked mostly in business, right? I worked with a lot of men and a lot of women and a lot of business owners. It's mostly who I work with. And what I would notice, and in my own experience, I would just really notice for myself and in some of my clients, especially my women clients, that the the traits, the skills, the aspects of ourselves that made us incredibly successful in business, right? Our ability to drive things forward,
Mm-hmm.
our abilities to, a lot of times like overwork, to
Yeah.
push, to strive, to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Those traits didn't translate very well at home.
No.
They didn't translate well in our relationships with our partners and husbands. And my own story is like I was divorced twice before I really realized this for myself
Mm.
because I was you just honestly really caught in this paradigm of success where I thought success needed to have me doing a lot,
Mm-hmm.
leading everything, controlling what I could, like
Mm-hmm.
and that just didn't after I was divorced a second time and had another relationship that didn't work, I just had to really um kind of look at myself in the mirror and say like, well, these relationships, like you're the common thread. You're not maybe not the fault of it is not all yours, but
Right.
there is a common thread of you in here. Wonder if there's something different
Mm-hmm.
that you could learn. So I started to see, and then this is with men too. Like it's how we've adapted ourselves at work. Often it just doesn't yeah, it just doesn't work well for our primary relationships. And so
No.
I just started to see there's this big opportunity. One of um my own biggest transformations has been in this realm of being really pretty awful with relationships with men to being really like so well taken care of now by my now
Mm-hmm.
husband. and just having a
Mm-hmm.
deeply fulfilling and satisfying. It's not work. We don't work on our relationship,
No.
and so that's pretty, yeah, so I see such a connection between the two because again, we spend so much of our lives working, don't we?
We
Like
do.
we work a lot if we're working
Mm-hmm.
people. And so of course one affects the other. And again,
Mm-hmm.
having worked with a lot of executives and business owners over the years, rarely in business are we just talking about business. They
Yeah.
bring their relationships in, they bring, like everything in because it's a whole life.
Yes.
It's not that we really don't have realms of business and life, like that's not really how it works. We're all living a whole life.
So, in order for the new relationship of yours to work, how did you like, what did you have to like change or transform or like, yeah, do, do or feel
Everything.
everything? Okay,
I'm
tell us.
teasing. I'm teasing. Well, so
Mhm.
yeah, like I was used to, and I have a big personality and a lot of drive and ambition in life. So I was just used to leading everything. Like it's just what I did. I like to take control of things. I like to, yeah, get results, and that's what I always tried to do with men. But after that relationship I had after my second divorce, like that level of control that I tried to exhibit, like it didn't work at all. Like
Okay.
it left me on my knees, like,
Okay.
like really, really strung out. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's interesting. There was a book that someone had given to me, well-meaning, in 2006 because they could see what was happening in my relationship with my
Mm.
now ex-husband. And they gave me this book, and over a 10-year period, I picked this book up 4 different times. And I thought, this is the biggest bunch of BS anyone has ever written. It was all about masculine and feminine energy. And I thought it was complete BS.
Yeah.
And but somehow I kept it. I don't know why I didn't like give it away or something, but I
Interesting.
kept it.
Yeah.
After I had that really horrible breakup, the one that kind of brought me to my knees, I picked that book up and I read it cover to cover one night and
Mm.
thought, this is brilliant. Like, oh my gosh, this has been the missing piece for me.
Yeah.
And it really was around, men and women both tapping more into our natural essence.
Mm-hmm.
Me as a feminine woman, in my heart of hearts, I was a feminine woman. I didn't
Yeah.
know what I was exhibiting was mostly masculine energy. I didn't have an
Mm.
understanding of that,
No.
right? And so when I started to soften,
Mm-hmm.
not have to have control of everything, maybe
Yeah.
let some things just develop instead of feeling like I needed to poise press for a result.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it felt so good to me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it felt like, oh my gosh, not everything in the world is on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And that felt amazing. And then the thing that eventually happened as I developed this more sort of softer feminine side, and it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I noticed just men responded to me completely differently.
Mm. Okay. So when you, what did that look like in your business though? Like, what did you actually do to change? Did you spend more hours at home? Did you just relax into your business? Like,
Yeah,
was it
this
less
is
work hours?
it's a great question.
Okay.
So, prior to delving into, again, more kind of feminine energy, even when I would try to sort of give myself a break, so to speak, like, oh, I'll take a day off or I'll take a couple hours off, I was
Yeah.
always thinking about my business. Like
Yeah.
there were really not many off times. I'd
Yeah.
wake up in the middle of the night thinking about my business, and I would never really resolve anything doing that, by the way. Like it wasn't very effective,
No.
but it's just what I did. So I was always kind of strategizing and pushing and and so
Yeah.
what happened when I dove more into my feminine energy is um if I decided to have a day off, I really have a day off. Like
Yeah.
I do something really pleasurable for me,
Yeah.
and I don't think about it. I
Yeah.
just don't think about the business.
Yeah.
And so over the years, like I've worked so much with people who have burnout. Like that's because that's my story. Like that was who I was.
Yeah.
And so to me, like this is such an ingredient to throw this in about burnout, because again, burnout mostly is mental for people. They think it's because they're working too much.
Right.
I think most people actually have a lot of energy for work while they're working, but what they do is think about work
Yeah.
when they're not working, and that's where the
Yeah.
burnout really comes in. So for me, this delving into my more feminine energy, it just was like I was more willing to experiment with things, play with things, be a bit more creative with things,
Hmm.
not take someone else's strategy and try to put it into my business, right? Like really
Yeah.
use this more kind of feminine approach. And still, like I'm a worker bee,
Yes.
I really am. When I work, I love to work, and I can work a 12-hour day. I don't do that a lot, but I can when I need to, and then
Hmm.
come away feeling really refreshed. Like I
Yeah.
don't feel exhausted from it.
No.
But it's so much more. Yeah, I just have
Y-
much more balance now. I'm not
y-
using all push.
yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One question comes to my mind though. Like, and it's maybe it's a bit of the chicken and the egg question, but because you've been doing this for a while, I have a feeling it's a question that some women and men possibly would have. It's sort of, do you think women go into a relationship and their work, and it doesn't have to be entrepreneurship, it can be corporate 100%, right? Like there's like,
Hmm.
yeah, like it just women overdoing their career, we could say. So do you think some sometimes it's like the relationship is poor, and therefore women put their all their energy and heart and soul into something that does make them feel perhaps more worthy, or more adoration, or feel like maybe it's something that they're good at, or is it, or women that, and then therefore their relationship fails, right? Because it's
Yes.
too much. Or do you feel like, it could be that women kind of start off their careers thinking, they have to do X, Y, and Z in order to be worthy, and therefore their relationship has failed because of it. Like, what like, do you have a variety of relationships that have come to you, like with one more than the other, or?
Hmm. It's like I think all of those things you said are spot on and kind of interwoven is what I see.
Yeah.
Here's what I see about that is so many of us are not brought up, not everyone, but many of us are not brought up connected to our own inherent worthiness.
Mm,
Like it's part of the collective currently,
yeah.
generally.
Yeah.
And so what we've learned over the years is that we need to perform to be valuable,
Yeah.
right? In school, it's get A's and you get
Yeah.
praised. We get an A minus and someone says, oh, you could do better than that, right?
Hmm.
So you have to do something. You have to be performing, you have to be doing something to be valuable. And so like that gets you know that gets programmed in so early for many people, and
Hmm.
certainly
Yeah.
did for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then we go into a relationship, we go into our working world, and that's still there. It's
Yeah.
still there. It's the
Yeah.
norm.
It's just
And then
another
what
it's just another way of trying to find that worth.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So at work, like most of us, or many of us in my world anyway, like I'll have people who are really burned out. They're overworking, they're overperforming, they feel guilty for taking time off. Like all these standards they
Yeah.
hold themselves to. But what doesn't often get talked about is this piece about worthiness that we're delving into here. People
Hmm.
try to rearrange their schedules. They try to draw
Mm.
boundaries. They try to do all these things without talking about, or without realizing that, like, oh, what we have to do, whether we're talking about work or relationships, we have to find that inherent worthiness, and we
Hmm.
find that inside of ourselves. It's gonna, like, all boats rise with that tide. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely true. Like when we find our own worthiness, when we find that we're worthy just by being, living, breathing human beings. We don't have to do anything.
Right.
That's our birthright.
Yeah.
Then our relationships are going to get better because we're not going to depend on a relationship for our worthiness,
Yeah.
right? We're not going to depend on whether
Mm-hmm.
we get a raise at work or whether we get that client for our
Mm-hmm.
worthiness. We already know what that is. So then again, just all of life starts getting better there. But I think it's all interwoven. Like
Yeah.
it is hard to say which came first, the chicken and egg. I'm not exactly sure. I
No,
don't know.
no.
Yeah.
It would, yeah, like it does center around worthiness. Yeah. And then I think a lot of, I think especially women, because just, yeah, intuitively, and like we're meant to be nurturers, we're meant to be caregivers. And therefore I don't know. I sometimes feel like we've it's really hard to give us, that self-care, when you talk about, self-love, worthiness being the core of all of our needs, is that knowing that that's the truth, right? From, if we all claimed it from the beginning. But then I think because we're naturally such caregivers, it's if we start doing more of that, like, taking care of my own vessel now, whether that be, you know taking time for yourself, or whatever, like then we right away we feel guilty because it's time away from, that nurturing or that doing energy. I don't know, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I think that we get to cultivate. There's an opportunity for us to cultivate in ourselves a deep trust in ourselves.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like really
mm-hmm,
trusting in ourselves, trusting in the divine, trusting in life, that that us taking care of ourselves will result in something higher and better than if we're always taking care of everything else but ourselves.
okay.
So it's sort of like I think we need to, or from my experience and working with clients in here, there is sort of a leap of faith that we have to
Mm,
make, and
mm-hmm,
to see like, oh wow, when I do this for myself, oh, other amazing things happen. The things I think will happen
mm,
because I'm being quote unquote selfish actually didn't happen, right? We think
mm-hmm,
something's going to go wrong with our child or
mm,
our partner or whatever. And those things
mm.
typically don't happen if we're truly taking care of ourselves from that sort of like, yeah, divinely led place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're not really talking about being selfish or doing anything against anyone else. We're just going like, fill your own cup first. There's a reason. That's a cliche. It's,
Yeah.
there's truth
I
in it.
know. I know. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Okay. So self-trust, self-trust, self-worth, intuitive guidance. So how has this transformed your own life, practicing these skills?
Oh, like in so many ways. I will tell you a story of really, I think, the beginning of my journey to this self-trust, this really following divine guidance. And it's when I was married to my ex-husband, who was the father of my child. And
Mm-hmm.
my child was about 10 years old at the time, my son. And I had this deep knowing that the relationship, I would not be able to fulfill my life's potential if I stayed inside that relationship. And at the same time, I didn't really want to tear my life upside down. I had a really good life. It wasn't that we had a bad
Mm.
life. Didn't want to tear that up for my son, but I just had this deep knowing.
Can I, like, can you
Hmm.
expand on that?
Yeah.
What you said about, I know my life, like there was something, you wouldn't reach your full potential. I don't know if that's what your exact words
Hmm.
were, but like
Hmm.
tell me more about that. Like what was the download, like
Yeah.
that knowing, like do you remember when you first felt that, and what does that
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm. I was expanding in a direction
Hmm.
that my ex-husband wasn't fully comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so I always felt that I was kind of walking this like tightrope of expanding in the way that I was really feeling called to expand and doing work that was, yes, like more intuitive, more spiritual in a
Mhm.
way. And then him sort of not being comfortable with that because
Mhm.
he liked control too, like all of us do, I suppose. So there was, I
Mhm.
was in that space. But so I had this deep knowing though that if I really wanted to continue that expansion, it was probably going to have to be outside of
Mhm. That makes
that
sense.
container. And so I had that knowing. And I had it for quite a while. I mean, more time than I'm very comfortable even, like
Mhm.
sharing because it was years. And then
Mhm.
when I finally went to him with that and I said, like, I can't.
Mhm.
He wasn't a violent person, but he was a very expressive, emotional person. And he said to our marriage counselor intensive we had gone on, if she tries to take my son from me, I'm going to rip the flesh from her bones.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so I was petrified because I had this
Yeah.
deep knowing, right? And I thought, oh, I was really hoping this would be easy. I was
Yeah.
hoping on some level that
Yeah.
this was going to be easy. Okay. So we
Yeah.
went home from that. That was in September of 2015, I think. And we went home and it was clear that we were not going to be able to work it out, but it was also clear that he was not going to do this without a massive fight. And I did not want a fight. I love peace so much. I did not want to fight.
You know what? Like I must say, like that I want peace. If I heard the most common requests from women that are going through rough patches in their relationship, I all I want is peace. So it's so funny you say
Yes.
that's the same thing. It's such a
Yes.
common, yeah. Okay.
It
Sorry.
really is. We're not built to fight in the feminine, right? I hadn't even
No.
discovered the chat, but I knew I didn't really want to fight. So fast forward about, 6 weeks, it was clear that was not going to work. He was still wanting to fight. And I just, I spoke to the divine and said, God, please, like,
Hmm.
I feel like I'm being patient. I've been patient, but this is
Hmm.
looking like a fight. Like, what am I going to do? And I
Hmm.
heard, and again, a
Hmm.
lot of times I hear, be patient. I've got this. No time frame.
No.
No time frame, right? But I've got this. But it was a knowing. Okay, okay, I
Yeah.
can be patient. And
Yeah.
here's what ended up happening. This was really wild. Um, Fast forward then another 6 weeks. We're at the end of November of that year, and I ended up having to have a breast biopsy. They thought I had breast cancer,
Mm.
which I eventually
Oh.
did have breast cancer. I just didn't have it right then.
Oh.
And so I was told that I needed to come home and rest for several days and really take care of myself.
Mm.
And of course, a pattern that always played out in our relationship, he became deathly ill. Okay. So instead of me taking care of myself,
Oh my
we're in this
gosh.
really weird place in our relationship. He gets really like bedridden. 9 days he was down, and I was so mad. I'm embarrassed to say I was so mad because then like I'm supposed to be taking care of myself, but everything about the house was me. I was so mad, and he he like literally. I'm choosing these words. He arose on the ninth day and he said, "I need to have a conversation with you." And I said, "Okay, let's have that tonight." And we had this conversation, and he said, I think I was struck down with this illness so that I would have to think about the destruction I wanted to cause with you and really consider it. And I'm like, my jaw, my jaw
Wow.
dropped open. And he said, what I've seen through being ill is that if you want to be divorced, let's make it the most peaceful divorce in history.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And this was in early December of that year. And I was so struck by the conversation. I said, like, I never thought we would have this conversation we just had. And I would never have thought those words would come out of your mouth. Can I just have the month to think about it? Because now I'm thinking, you just said something that I never thought would come out of your mouth. Now I really want to make sure that, and when
Right.
we got to January, it was still correct for us to
Yeah.
move forward with the divorce. But we
Yeah.
did it very peacefully. And we
Wow.
we we didn't have, like, I'm not going to say there weren't moments, but when there were moments that we would just both be revved, we just
Mhm.
agreed, like, let's come back to this in 5 minutes,
Yeah.
5 hours, 5 days. Like,
Yeah.
let's not do this to one another.
Yeah.
And so this
Talk
is to
about
me
divine intervention.
divine intervention. This is what happens when we get out of our own ideas on timing, on what needs to
Mm,
happen, on who the other person is, even,
mm-hmm,
and just
mm,
let
mm.
divine intervention come in. Let our own intuition, let ourselves be led by something much more intelligent than ourselves.
Yes. Wow.
You know?
That is the perfect story. Like to intertwine, interweave what we've been talking
Yeah.
about. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm just thinking because I've taken many couples through separation and divorce that and obviously the opposite, been able to mend relationships as well. But like, I mean, wouldn't that be the like such a gift for one partner to say to another, like, let's make this the most, you
Yes.
know, what did he say? The most
The most peaceful divorce in
peaceful.
history.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show anybody who's listening out there that, yeah, get out of your head and stop thinking about what it's going to be, convincing yourself that there's no other way, and just allow the flow of yeah, your intuition and your knowing and your trusting, um that this, yeah, like, yeah, take the control away and give it up to the universe, God, whatever it
Yes.
might be for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just such an intelligence working on our behalf,
Oh,
it looks like to me, right? Like that just there's something here that is spinning the globe and shining the sun and making sure we have oxygen. Like it's such a bigger play than what we can figure out in our
it
heads.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we just let go. And like, I'm not sure how old you are, Kim, but like, you know, I am not afraid of getting old, because I feel like, I mean, there is something to say that experience and age does bring you such wisdom. And it also, I think, we do realize this more and more too. It's easier to rely on, the divine intelligence and the universe having our back, as Gabby Bernstein notes in her
Mhm.
book, when age is, like, to our advantage. It's like there's so much more wisdom, I find, in being able to let go. I mean, because when I look at myself too, like when you talk about business and or degrees or certifications, I mean, it's really sad how we're all, sort of brainwashed to think that it must be this way, and you must have this level of education or be a certain place in your career, and if you're not by this certain age, you're nothing. Or um it's sad that especially, I think, in North America, how we're so brainwashed in this sense. um
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
to me, like I'm 56, so I feel
55. Yeah.
okay, so we're really similar in age. Like
Mhm.
I feel like I've gotten so much like smarter since
Yes.
I reached my 50s. Like I wouldn't go back because and I look at some of the younger women coming up and I think they are just wiser maybe than I was at like I look at some
Perhaps.
30-year-old women. I think
Yeah.
they're a lot
Yeah.
wiser than I was. But like this life experience that I have, this wisdom that I tap into so much, like I would not give that up for anything. Like
No.
I think, wow, I wonder how much wiser I'm gonna be even in my 60s or 70s. Like that's very
Exactly.
inspiring to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that we can really impact the world in such a different way with this level of wisdom.
Mhm. And again,
Yeah,
taking care, and the advances, that's made in health too, and holistic medicine as well, in terms of, Kim, I think we're going to have another 44, 45 years ahead of us. So, I mean, that's
right.
exciting.
It is so exciting. It's so
Yeah.
exciting. I
Yeah.
love that.
But you're also right. Like, I do think, um Yeah. I think because of emotional intelligence and the whole topic of emotional intelligence, um, and books such, those books that do talk about, you know, tapping into more of your feminine energy, etc., that, maybe the women will do this a little bit different, like the generations coming up behind us. But yeah, it's interesting how the pendulum swings then when you think of it, because the the 50s and 60s, because those women maybe feeling a little bit more in bondage, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
more submissive to the
Right.
masculine, and then the 70s came about and women burning bras, and then we switched, right, like to the whole other
Yes.
end of the spectrum, or the pendulum, and now we're moving back, hopefully. Yeah,
Yes. It's such an interesting evolution,
it
isn't it?
is.
Like just to see where we've come, and I always just feel like really, really lucky to be at this stage where I was able
Mhm.
to, and who knows where I'll be by the end of my life, but like to have lived through that, time when there was kind of one way to be successful as a woman, and it was for us to
Exactly.
wear our blazers and our
Yes.
pantsuits and
Oh my god,
pumps and
yeah.
be power women,
Yes.
and really, yeah, like, and then to sort of think that was the only way to be successful, like that was a fascinating experience and exhausting, like really
Yeah.
exhausting for me. But then to then find my way back to just a softer, more intuitive, yet really
Mm.
successful in a really different
Mm.
way.
Mm.
Like that's fascinating to me that I've got to have that experience in this lifetime.
No kidding.
It's
Yeah.
pretty cool actually.
I
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's beautiful. It really is. I know, like, I have to laugh, like, when we talk about, like, the super powered, like you say, the blazers, high heels, like, let's go kind of, but like I also see them, like, getting out of bed, and, like, honestly, like, it's almost like stepping into the phone booth, coming out, with their cape like superwoman, and they're hitting the the gym at 5 a.m. and getting their hit workout done, and then they're grabbing their green smoothie and they're driving their child to class, and you know bringing cupcakes as well that they baked the night before, and then they go into their corporate, like, it's just like, oh my god, like, and it's like the power pose while they're doing it, right? Oh my god, let's hope
Totally.
that era has died and will
Yes.
not come back.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so hard. So hard to live that
it's
way, right?
so
Whew.
hard. Yeah. And
Mhm.
all their female, like the estrogen and the progesterone and oxytocin just stripped from their bodies while doing
Mm.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
So,
lived through that. I can really relate to what you just said.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and wondering why, the fertility clinics are like popping up on every corner as well, like, oh,
Yes. Yes,
there's
and
a
wondering,
reason.
yeah. Exactly, wondering why we don't wanna have sex and like, all those things,
Exactly.
like, it just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so fascinating,
Yeah.
so fascinating.
Well, Kim, we should probably wrap up, but is there anything else, like any message that's on your heart
Yeah.
that you wanna.
Yeah, I wanna say, like, we talked a lot about sort of this evolution that's happened, and I wanna say to anyone listening who, yeah, maybe has that on their heart about their relationship, maybe they do have a deep knowing,
Mhm.
that maybe it's not correct for them. Like, what happened for me, the piece of the story we didn't really get to was I ended up meeting an incredible man, like the king in my life. I was able to really see him as a king, and we have built the most beautiful life together that and I said to you earlier, like, we don't work on our relationship. It
No.
just worked. We are
Mhm.
so incredibly satisfied and happy. It doesn't mean that it's all perfect, but like we just
Mhm.
don't put the effort into the relationship that he and I both thought in previous relationships. you had to have to be happy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so that's what I wanna say is like and that's the same in business too. Like I've made a full circle in business that where my business used to concern me a lot and I felt like I needed to push and just all these things. I've made a I like I love my business. It's
Mhm.
a it's a it's a portal of pleasure for me now.
Mm.
You know, it's a portal for my self-expression and that sort of thing. So this is where I would just love to say to people, if you just feel like you're kind of overthinking your life and
Mm.
you're not squeezing the enjoyment, and the ease out of
Mhm.
your life, there is a better way. There is for every person. Because I'm going to say, if this can be me, someone
Yeah.
who used to labor over everything, it's
Yes.
possible for me. It's literally possible for anyone.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a perfect last message to leave. It's giving people hope. It doesn't have to be hard. Like life is not meant to be hard.
It's
Um,
not. It's
so
not.
there definitely hope on the other side. And how do people find you if they would like to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really easy to find on social media.
Hmm.
I am Kim Kaase, and it's Kaase on both LinkedIn and Instagram. And I'm
Mm.
Kimberly Kaise on Facebook. I post,
Mhm.
a fair amount every week.
Mhm.
Kind of depending if business is more your channel, LinkedIn is probably a great place to
Mhm.
look at burnout, but I talk kind of about everything else, including business on Instagram and Facebook, and just, find that fun for my self expression. And people find
Yeah.
me there.
Right. Find it fun.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
I
And
have enjoyed this so much. Thank you
yes,
so much.
me too. It's very enlightening. And like I said, it brings a level of hope that, I hope to women and men, obviously. Yeah, where there might not have been hope before. So it's
Yeah.
just such a beautiful message. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, take care. And everyone else, we'll see you next week. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.